Activated.
Analyzing.
Update complete.
Hey guys, before I get into it, I want to take a couple of minutes to clarify a couple of things. First, I'll be taking a look at the Battlestar Jupiter class reimagined, so not the original. Secondly, unlike Star Wars and Star Trek, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, the canon is not as clearly defined. So I won't be sticking to my guns as I usually do when it comes to this mythos, this lore. While Battlestar Galactica does have a significant fandom, the franchise is simply not large enough to really nail down all of the technicals. And it's really hard to say what is canon and what isn't. I mean, there are some defined canon requirements, but it's not as strict as it is with Star Wars or, again, Star Trek. Additionally, I've heard that Ronald D. Moore kept things vague on purpose because he didn't want to deal with the tech aspect of everything. But from what I could parse, comics and novels are definitively not canon. Games are sketchy, bordering on not canon, possibly save for Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, and everything on screen is definitively canon. With that out of the way, let's just get into it. When researching the Battlestar Galactica to determine what class it was, to be honest, it still remains unclear. I don't think we can be completely sure what class of Battlestar that it was. The most accepted theory is that the class is a Jupiter Class Battlestar. For the purposes of this breakdown, we'll be going with that. Everything generally lines up when you look at the specs of the Jupiter class to everything that happens with the Battlestar Galactica on screen. And most fandom does concur that this indeed was a Jupiter class ship. That, and there's literally no evidence or arguments that I could find that suggests it isn't. So again, let's just go with that. The Jupiter class Battlestar was the most advanced... Wait, no. It was the most... de-advanced, I guess?
As I was saying, form follows function. Now, nowhere is this axiom of design more readily apparent than on board the world-famous Battlestar Galactica. This ship, the last of her kind still in service, was constructed over 50 years ago during the early days of the Cylon War. Now, originally, there were 12 Battlestars, each representing one of Cobalt's 12 colonies.
Though still very powerful, ship of the colonial fleet. It's important to know that we don't know a lot about before the first Cylon War. What we do know is that the Cylons betrayed their masters and began an all-out assault on humanity. The Cylons would attempt to exterminate all of humankind. Naturally, a war broke out between the Cylons and the Colonials themselves. Before the war, the colonies were largely divided with infighting and skirmishes between them. The first Cylon War changed all that. It brought the colonies together under the Articles of Colonization. Again, not all of this is confirmed, and I'm only piecing this together, but most likely the Articles of Colonization was a joint diplomatic overture by several of the more affluent and rich colonies who had given the most to the colonial fleet, and that the Articles were created at the time to keep the more rebellious colonies in line and to bring humanity together. As a part of agreeing to the Articles of Colonization, every colony would get a Jupiter Class Battlestar, which was funded by, again, the more affluent and rich colonies. And it was a great deal for the poorest among the colonies. I mean, the Jupiter class was an extremely powerful Battlestar, and it was an offer that most could not ignore. Interestingly enough, though, the Battlestars, again, while being considered the best military asset you could have, would ultimately all be destroyed but 3. That's 9 out of 12 were destroyed in the first Cylon War. We have conflicting information on when the first Jupiter-class Battlestar was built. Some say that it was built years before the Cylon War, while others state it was built as a direct result. Honestly, I don't see a lot of evidence to suggest that it was built before the Cylon War, and it doesn't seem logical to me. Let me explain. When humanity created the Cylons, the Colonials were extremely advanced technologically. Technology was abundant and connected the colonies in every way. Their military and ships would also have this advanced tech. They would be able to jump anywhere they wanted utilizing computers. No one was doing anything manually. When the Cylons rebelled, we know that the initial assaults were just devastating and that the military was crushed. The Colonials would have to regress in order to fight the Cylons. So it would be logical that the Jupiter class, which had absolutely no networking and was one of the most basic ships you could find, would have been created in the initial stages of the war. To give an example, why would you create a war canoe when you could create a submarine? Unless the enemy showed that they had the ability to destroy the submarine and not the war canoe. When it comes to a breakdown of the Jupiter-class vessel, I'm going to be including some of the original material from Battlestar Galactica that wasn't in Reimagine, but what I'm including was most likely a part of the Battlestar. It is possible that should another iteration of the series come out, it may or may not confirm what I'm about to be going over. The Jupiter-class ship would have facilities that included the bridge, which housed core command functions and helped to coordinate Viper operations. It would be where all vital command and control personnel and systems would be. The Battlestar's bridge would have no quote-unquote command chair either. The command officers stood in the middle of the room with a display above them, as well as a command table that star charts and other pieces of information could be placed. The ship would have 2 landing bays that would be used as a hangar for landing and launching, as well as repair facilities. The bays were located amidship on both port and starboard sides. Launch tubes would exist that were separated so that they would be able to extend and retract based on the needs of the ship and whether the vessel was in combat or not. A medical bay, which was basically a hospital if we're all being honest, would be located deep within the vessel itself. The med bay would have science labs that allowed for research of pathogens and to study illnesses that patients would come up with. While the tools used by the doctors and the nurses would be considered archaic, the layout and ability of the medical bay itself would be quite sophisticated. Most Jupiter-class Battlestars would have pilot training centers that included pilot simulators, and yeah, the Galactica didn't have them. But to be fair, it was being turned into a museum. I'm talking about a fully functional Battlestar here. The Jupiter-class would also have a brig, an officers' club, and an airlock that would have EVA provisions. I know there are more rooms listed on several wikis, but the things presented here are more than likely to be confirmed, and I consider them logical. Other rooms don't really appear, and they don't seem consistent to me in some ways. But I'm open to your opinions on the matter. A Battlestar at normal operations would work as a large to mid-sized city with a crew of up to 2,500 people. Some estimates state that a Battlestar could run with more than 4,000 crew, including the support personnel. The ship's internal systems allowed for it to be self-sufficient with water and air, and the vessel would have the ability to scour for other provisions to work autonomously if it needed to. From what I could find, the Jupiter class was 1,445 meters long, that's just shy of a mile. The ship's propulsion would include Class 4 main rearward-facing sublight engines mounted on the outer hull, 2 on the dorsal and ventral surfaces. Additionally, there were 2 synced FTL drives that would allow for faster-than-light travel. Computer systems aboard the Jupiter class were exceptionally archaic compared to what the Colonials could field. Those computers would not be allowed to be networked. This would lower the likelihood of the ship being compromised by Cylon viruses or hacking attempts. Additionally, most calculations and operations would be handled manually by humans. The ship would be outfitted with anywhere from 24 to 40 large anti-ship gun turrets. Each emplacement would be mounted with 2 guns that would fire in tandem. They would be placed on the dorsal and ventral sides of the bow. The main batteries could be used both offensively and defensively to either strike blows against other ships, or utilize flak to create a screen that would prevent ordnance and enemy fighters from reaching the Jupiter class itself. Interestingly enough, these weapons would not be automated but manned, with the gunners being able to see the battle while they were attempting to stop other fighters or attack capital ships. Jupiter class vessels would additionally have point defense guns located on the sides of the flight pods in twin mountings. The point defense guns would be much more effective at destroying fighters in general, as the flak abilities of the main weapon could be bypassed by enemy starfighters. Interesting fact, while we do see the Battlestar fire nuclear weapons, the Battlestar Galactica definitively does, we never see them fire non-nuclear missiles. Smaller variants that are similar to the Battlestar can, so it's presumed that the Jupiter class would be as well, we just haven't observed it. I also read a few things that lasers would be used at different points. I don't remember seeing a laser in the show itself, but based on how many sites have the Jupiter class with these lasers, it's possible that they were defensive weapons as well. Additionally, weapons used by the Jupiter class were originally considered quote-unquote dumb ordnance. None of the weapons would be made smart or could track a target. Again, this is due to systems being able to be compromised like we've seen before by the Cylons. The number of Vipers that a Jupiter Battlestar would have is contentious. However, from what I can gather, a normal complement for a Battlestar would be about 75 Vipers. The original Starfighter complement would be Viper 1s, but as time went on, the Battlestar would begin to take on Viper 2s and other models. Additionally, a Battlestar would also have Raptors, which would allow for other specialized operations. As I stated before, there's a lot that's shrouded in mystery that isn't explained, and I do believe that this was by design. That's why I don't have a lot more for you guys. Overall, the Battlestar was one of the most famous ships in colonial history. It also proved to be the most resilient. But what are your guys' thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. As always, please rate, comment, and subscribe, and guys, I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is actually the YouTube cut. If you'd like to see the Lore Reloaded Producer's Cut, which includes actual clips of the shows with more videos to help with context, consider becoming a patron for as low as $1 a month. Not only is there more content for you to see, but patrons get to see these videos a full 2 days in advance. If you're interested in seeing it but don't want to become a patron, then head over to lorereloaded.com. The Lore Reloaded Producer's Cut will be uploaded a full day in advance before coming on YouTube. Lore Reloaded is completely fan-funded and relies on viewers like you. Thank you so much for your consideration.